This episode is brought to you by SRB Field Rests. Your shotgun, bow, or rifle is an extension of who you are as a hunter. Whether you're hunting snows in a muddy mess of a field, mallards in the marsh, or whitetail from a ground blind, SRB Field Rests has your back. A local Kansas company that provides an easy-to-use, simple, and ergonomically effective solution to just awkwardly holding onto your gun or your bow when you do not need to, allowing you to have more freedom, comfort, and safety in the field. Enter discount code FOWLFRONT at checkout for 10% off your order of any SRB Field Rest today. This episode is also brought to you by Oak Barn Beef, a direct-to-consumer, family-owned farm that delivers high-quality, DNA-tested, dry-aged Nebraska beef from their family to yours. You can select from a wide variety of boxes. My personal favorite is the Husker Beef package, which combines jerky, ground beef, steaks, and a brisket. These packages are perfect for families, get-togethers, out-of-town hunts, or for you outfitters looking to upgrade your table fare for your clients. Order yours today at oakbarnbeef.com.
And what's really important is that we band together, we speak with one voice.
And I was like, you sure? Because I've got 2 kids, I don't want it to ruin your hunt. And you're like, yeah, just coming home with me.
Just take your time. Like I said, it would have killed a normal man, but I'm not normal, but you know.
When you said, why do you want to talk about that? To me, it was kind of like, oh my gosh, there's so many different factors that go into this decision.
Enjoy it for what it is. Every moment of it. If you're only going to shoot one duck.
Welcome to the Fowl Front Podcast, part of the Waypoint Outdoor Collective.
Hey, Fowl Front, it's Hannah from Oak Barn Beef. We're giving away a box of steaks, jerky, and more premium beef exclusively for the listeners of the Fowl Front. To sign up, head over to fowlfront.com and click on the Oak Barn Beef giveaway tab to enter into this giveaway. Thanks, and we can't wait for you to try our Nebraska-raised and dry-aged premium beef.
All right, welcome to the Fowl Front Waterfowl Podcast. And this week, you can, if you're not into this, you can turn it off. But we're doing Deer Week. It's Deer Week on the Waterfowl Podcast. And I am joined today by my good friend, Ian Burrow of Powderhook and the engineer and talent behind Public Pursuit. Ian, how are you doing?
I am well. How are you, Ben?
Doing great. Doing great. So, Ian, what's going on with you?
I am currently trying to catch up on sleep after spending the last 2.5 weeks of whitetail hunting. And when I say whitetail hunting, what I mean is waking up at 3 every single day, driving an hour to park, hiking a half hour to sit or scout, whichever, and then calling a timeout a few hours later to jump back in the truck, drive another hour back to town, work for a few hours. If my boss asks, it's a full 8, and then jump back in the truck and drive back, park, hike 30 minutes to sit. And then get home around 11 and then repeat that every single day for 2.5 weeks. So I'm in recovery mode right now.
Good. Does your wife recognize you?
Yeah, she does. She's happy it's over. I can tell you that.
Good. I'm going to ask you to do something awkward and maybe a little bit difficult here. Just for the people that don't know, what's our relationship? How, who are you to me? What am I to you?
Let's see. Ben to me is the guy that I can call when I have a duck question or a goose question. And I don't mean to water down a relationship that way, but that's kind of how I think it started. Was I saw Ben as a reliable source of information, as someone who could mentor me in this journey I'm going down as a hunter. And since then, through his, starting from his podcast, through us talking to then us getting to the point where we had each other's phone number, it's kind of like, I guess sounds like a date thing, but
yeah, it's an online dating thing.
Yeah,
but we've sealed the deal. We've had beers at Old Chicago. First date. Second date is going to be what, opener of of the late zone big duck, right?
Yes, next week.
Next week, yeah, man.
Yeah,
I am looking forward to that.
But yeah, so that's my relationship with Ben. Was I sought him out for his expertise, or my perception of his expertise, and it's just gone from there.
Yeah, we share some similarities in a little bit of background, occupation, or previous occupation, or whatever, military stuff. But Ian's the guy that I can say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" he's gonna tell me it sucks, or he's gonna tell me, it's good, and he's gonna tell it to me unabashedly, and that's a very appreciative thing in a friend. So
that's fair.
Yeah. All right, Ian. So what's Public Pursuit, man?
So Public Pursuit is a project I started last year. Last year is my first year to, I'm not going to say dive into hunting, because I'd started hunting a few years prior. I killed my first deer when I was 21. Haven't looked back ever since. But last year I ended up drawing a tag for every species in Kansas. And Kansas is where I grew up and where I ended back after my stint in the military. And when I realized what I had, which in my eyes was a very unique opportunity, I wanted to document it as a way to share that with my friends and family, and a way to look back. You know, I'm a millennial. I don't do scrapbooks, but I've got Instagram and Facebook and stuff. And I set out to document my journey to try and hunt all of these things I had tags for. So for those of you who aren't from Kansas, that is everything from antelope to mule deer to whitetail to elk, snipe, sandhill crane, crow, squirrel, rabbit. I mean, it's a pheasant, prairie chicken. I mean, it's a pretty lengthy list, and it was a pretty big endeavor that I set out on. And at the time, I thought, you know what, I'll go for it, because I don't know when else I could do something like this. And didn't harvest everything, but I can say that I've hunted everything but sandhill crane. I didn't get to that, so that's still on the list. But this year, I'm taking all the lessons I learned from last year. And the public piece on the title of Public Pursuit, that's because I'm doing all this on public land. I don't own a bunch of land. Actually, I don't own any land. I don't have family with land. I didn't grow up hunting. So public land is where I hunt predominantly. And so this year, now I'm taking the lessons learned from last year. I'm focusing my efforts. I'm not hunting every single species, but I am hunting what I'd say is like one of each. So waterfowl, big game, upland, all those different types, small game, all the different types of hunting that you can do in Kansas, and a few actually outside of the borders of Kansas. And so this year I'm stepping up my game in the sense that I caved and I bought a real camera. And I'm trying to have a little bit higher production quality. And again, if nothing else, it's just to document for myself, for my friends and family, and then something to look back on in a few years. And then the last part about what I'm calling Volume 2, which is this year, is my biggest goal out of all that is that I take some time out of my hunting season and I work with at least one more person to try and create a new hunter. And that's my focus this year. So I don't think my pictures or my stories or my videos, I don't think that's always going to be able to entirely influence someone to try something new, or convince someone who doesn't hunt to go hunting. But if I can take someone personally and show them why I do what I do and why I love what I love, then maybe there's a chance that we'll have one new hunter buying a hunting license next year.
And that guy this year is John, right?
Yep, his name is John.
How is that going? Tell me, how did you find this guy? How'd you pick him?
So I put out a blanketed alert across as many channels as I could through the wildlife department, through groups and companies that I work with, through friends and family. And what surprised me is that I didn't get as much of a response as I was expecting. I really thought... You thought
you were going to have to filter people out.
Yeah, I really did. And especially because I've partnered with Cabela's, Bass Pro, and Powderhook to do this. So this is an all expenses paid learn to hunt trip that's over the, I shouldn't say trip, learn to hunt journey from start to finish, from what kind of stuff should you wear, where should you go, how do you shoot a bow, or how do you shoot a rifle or a shotgun or whatever. Plus the hunting trip itself, and then how do you cut it up, how do you cook it, how do you preserve it, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, responses weren't that great. So I hit the phone book, and I was scrolling through, and I was like, who could I call? And believe it or not, I was in the high school orchestra, and I called my old high school orchestra teacher. I called the high school. I said, hey, does John still work there? I said, yeah, we'll connect you. I said, John. I said, Ian Burrow. I said, Ian, I haven't talked to you in a long time. I said, John, it's great to talk to you. I've got a harebrained idea for you. You hear me out. How would you like to learn how to go hunting this year? And that's how it started. And it's been really interesting. And he's a good guy. We get along really well. It's also been really fun to kind of connect a decade later after high school.
Sure.
And talk about, what's school like now and what we've been doing ever since. But what's also really interesting about this and him is that this guy he breaks the mold, which I'm happy about. The guy typically votes Democrat. He's got views on gun control. He lives in the suburbs. He's a high school music teacher. I mean, when you think of a hunter, or you think of any advertisement for hunting in the outdoors, like you would never, ever picture this guy.
It's not reaching this guy.
No. And that wasn't necessarily the intent when I called him. But I like how that's played out and how it's been really fun to explain and teach all these things that we know or we do as hunters to someone who's never had any context of it whatsoever.
Yeah. That's a really noble / kind of an interesting proposition. Hey man, you want to go, let's go hunting. I want you to commit to this thing. So how is, since you found him, how, what's his, can you give us any sneak peeks into how his worldview has changed or not?
Yeah, I can share some. We're wrapping up production right now, and those videos and that story will start to come out in about a month or so, just in time for the rifle season here in Kansas. But John has learned how to shoot a bow, and that's probably his favorite part. He loves coming home from work and like putting the kids to bed and then going in the backyard and shooting 20 arrows. Yeah. He really likes the fact that you can't just pick it up and do it, that you have to practice, and how, if the wind is such, or, your arm is such a way or whatever, you breathe a certain way, you're not going to shoot the same. And it takes a lot of practice. So he loves that. He's also destroyed more arrows than anyone I know, which has been a logistical nightmare because it takes a little while to get arrows made that are the right fit.
Like hitting the fence or like double driving arrows, because that's two different things. I think everybody that's shot more than 1,000 arrows knows that you pick different aim points on the target. Right.
I did teach him that. And truthfully, I don't know the story on all the missing arrows or all the broken arrows. That's just like every time I went over to his house the past few months, he's like, oh, by the way, the fletching on this is torn, or the knock on this fell out or cracked, or it's like, what are you doing? I mean, I honestly don't know, but I guess that's just part of it,
Yeah. I mean, he's using them.
Yeah.
So.
Let's see. In terms of how he's viewed hunting, he said that, and we've talked about it in depth. A lot of it met his expectations in terms of there's a lot of sitting and waiting. Because this isn't like a Western mountain spot and stalk kind of thing. We're doing a deer hunt, or did a deer hunt.
Yeah, Eastern deer hunt.
Yeah. So that met his expectation. But what's probably the thing that's been really interesting and I don't want to say life changing, but perception changing has been when we've talked at depth on like why you can only shoot one buck versus multiple does, and how that changes by where you're standing geographically. and the funding mechanisms that go into public land and wildlife and state employees, and then how things that land isn't just, unfortunately in 2019, land isn't just always perfect for wildlife.
Yeah.
So talking about like how people specifically within the wildlife department work to manage the land, to provide kind of a mixed bag of access, opportunity, habitat, population density, finding that happy medium between all these different things so that you have a chance to go hunting, you have a place to go hunting, but the wildlife aren't, the numbers aren't retrograding.
Yeah.
So
I suppose we should have had John on for this, but was there anything that he found that you perceived that he found as like kind of shocking throughout all this?
There is one. It was when we butchered and processed a deer, and it wasn't shocking in the context of like, oh no, blood and guts. It was shocking how much effort goes into that and time. And we set a time to do it and get together. And I said, no, John, it's going to be a while. He said, yeah, no problem. Let's do it. After the kids go to bed, let's start at 9. Like, John, this is like, it's going to be a long night. He's like, oh, I don't mind. We'll stay up late. It's okay. I don't mind. And I got home at 4:30 a.m. that day and I even showed up like an hour and a half early to get the garage set up.
Yeah.
And when we got
about 4 hours cut up or something?
It was 9, 10, 11, 12. It was about 6. Because we did the whole gambit. Because it's really not cold enough to just let your deer hang. So we had to go through. So we did the whole thing. We skinned it, butchered it up, and then did the full processing from steaks to sandwich slices to jerky to ground.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you did ground and you did sandwich slice. Okay. Yeah. I get you.
Yeah. Because for me, one, I wanted him to see all the different things you can do with it. But two, like in 6 months, I don't just want to eat hamburger. Like I want to be able to go in my freezer and have choices. Like, do I want to make a stew tonight or kebabs or, all the different choices.
Totally agree.
So that was probably the most shocking.
You got a sandwich slicer?
Yeah. Yep. I got a deli slicer.
I'm going to call you.
Yeah. It's so helpful. We'll talk about it another time, but I made goose prosciutto and that's what made me buy the deli slicer.
Okay. All right. Okay, man. So, all right, let's talk about your deer harvest this year. And before we do that, I want to kind of like set the stage here. So I think that it's perfect that you and me are talking about this right now because I think we have yin and yang stories with deer season so far this year, and I think it's really great to highlight both of those. And so I think we're going to do that all in this one episode. And so we're going to start off with your story of the deer that you got this year. So let's walk me through that.
Okay, let's see. I am proud to announce that I killed my first whitetail buck with a bow a few days ago. And I started bow hunting last year. So I'm still very young in the bow hunting journey. But it's been a goal for quite some time. I've killed a buck with the first buck I killed was a rifle. The second was with a crossbow. And now my third is with a compound bow. And like I said earlier, I hunted for 2.5 weeks for whitetail this year. And I explained kind of what that day looks like. And after about day 3, at least for me, I start to begin to struggle mentally. And it's something I do every time I hunt, and I don't know how to quite work around it yet, or if I ever will. But I set out on a hunt, whether it's, whitetail or ducks or whatever the case may be. And I have a game plan and I apply the known variables, like, okay, I know that deer are going to eat. I know they're going to sleep. I know they're going to walk. And then I set out and I scout, and I start looking for all the puzzle pieces to put together. So where are they eating? Where are they walking? Where are they sleeping? Where are the rubs and scrapes and all that kind of stuff? And when you feel like you got the puzzle put together, or when I feel like I got the puzzle kind of together to an extent that I can sit down and have a shot opportunity, and then it doesn't happen. I mean, the deer doesn't show up, or they show up somewhere completely different, way on the other edge of the woods, out of bow range. It starts to really bother me after about 3 days of that, because it's just the way my mind works, where it's like, if I apply these inputs, then I'm going to get this output, in theory, right? If I do the right things, then you succeed. And that's a harsh reality of hunting, is it's not always that way. And that's probably what brings me back to hunting constantly, and why I love it so much, is it seems to throw a lot of logic out the window at times, and it seems to really challenge me. And so anyway, I hunted for 2.5 weeks, and I was reaching a snapping point. I mean, I'm running low on sleep. I'm not eating. Not like I'm so stressed I'm not eating, but like I'm like so focused on what I'm doing, because it's like, okay, today's the day. I don't have time for breakfast. I'm just going to get this done. And there's probably something to be said for that. That's probably like the wrong mentality, but truthfully, it's after a few days, that starts to creep into my mind. And at the end of 2.5 weeks, I'm like full blown crazy person. And my poor wife is just like, why don't you just take a break? You don't understand. I'm trying to shoot a deer. So, anyway, that's the lead up. And I was talking with some friends at work, and they said, Ian, like, you're going crazy. You just need to shoot the first thing you see tomorrow. I said, well, yeah, that'd be great, obviously. But I articulate that because of what I'm about to tell you, which is that's just crazy. It's hunting. So I'm thinking about this, and I go home and I get all my stuff ready, and I go out in the morning. I think, okay, Ian, you're just going to shoot the first thing you see. The first thing. Doesn't matter. Just going to do it. And the wind was not in my favor, which for anyone who hunts whitetail, I mean, the wind is huge, right? I don't know what the number is, but a whitetail's nose has like 10 sensors. And to put that into context, a dog has like 1.
Right. And we have like a half.
Yeah.
Not even. Yeah. Not even. So I pick my spot, and that's the trouble with sitting in the morning, as you go in and it's dark, and you eventually have to make a decision of, all right, I'm just going to sit here and see what happens. And that's what I did. It was a spot I hadn't sat in before. And are you using a climber or?
So
ground?
I typically hunt off the ground. And on this day, which maybe this is the variable that I've been missing, I did have a stand with me. And so I threw it up in a tree and sat up there. But like I said, the wind was wrong, and I was pretty fuddy-duddy. But right at legal shooting light, the biggest buck I've ever killed walked within 10 yards of me. I mean, it was like right as the clock changed. I mean, it must have been a minute or two. He appeared, and he walked face forward, like facing me, walked towards me, and leaned down to get something to eat. And I said, well, Ian, you said you're going to shoot the first thing you saw, so let's just get this over with. And I shot him, and it was about a textbook double lung shot. He took off about 40 yards and nosedived into the dirt. And I thought that's what happened. But then another deer in the direction that he ran blew, which is like, for those of you who don't whitetail hunt, whitetail deer will make a sound. It's called blowing. And that is their way of alerting the forests of danger. And so when I saw that and I heard that, I thought, oh man, I missed, which I've done before. So I was like, wow, knock another arrow. Of course, like, why not? Why wouldn't I miss? You're never going to kill a deer, Ian. You're horrible at this. And so I sit, and because it was right at opening legal light, it's still kind of dark, and I'm in the timber. And another buck walks out. So I've now seen 2 bucks, both about the same size. And I'm just like, oh, what is going on? Well, I guess I'm going to shoot this one and maybe I won't miss this time. And I'm so glad I did this. I took a moment to look around once more before I drew back. And that's when I saw the big white patch of the buck that I did, in fact, shoot and kill. And he was 40 yards away. And at which point the sun had come up more, so it was more obvious. So I waited for the other buck to walk away, and I climbed down and I walked over, and sure enough, I shot he was probably 3 or 4 years old, 10 points, and half of his rack was jammed into the dirt because he nosedived so hard. And it was a huge, like, if you've ever seen Anchorman, it was a roller coaster of emotion, as Ron Burgundy would say. Because I had this huge sense of relief that I could finally sleep and eat. And this huge sense of relief that I had done what I'd set out to do. I'd met my goal. In fact, I exceeded my goal quite a bit. And then I had a good shot, because in bow hunting, all hunting, but in bow hunting, that's really predominant or prominent, Yeah. And then it was like a feeling of crazy joke or hallucination of like, oh man, this is the biggest buck I've ever shot. Like, real excited. And then it all kind of came full circle of like, oh shoot, I can't hunt a buck now. And it's a really interesting roller coaster of emotion for a whitetail hunter in Kansas. And I know there's other states and places similar to this, where in Kansas, you can only harvest one antlered deer a year. And you set out with this goal in mind. I'm going to hunt a buck. I'm going to kill a buck, and it's going to be amazing. And you put in all this time and effort. And in my case, you get to the point of insanity, because for me, I guess part of it's like my drive. Like, I will continue until I succeed, like no matter what. It's just the side effect is I go crazy. And you get to that point and you have this opportunity, you take the opportunity and you execute. And then you have a moment of relief, gratitude, excitement. And then you realize that I have to wait a whole nother year to relive this experience. And it's hard to communicate that well to someone who hasn't done it or doesn't do it. But I'm sure, well, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I know it's the same with, duck season. Like, when duck season comes to an end, it's like, oh, can't go duck hunting for a year, or any season for that matter.
Yeah, it is almost for duck season. It's kind of I don't know. I always kind of feel like, okay, it's a relief. And then literally 3 days later, I'm like, I'm ready for duck season again. Like, I'm just ready for it. Something interesting I wanted to point out kind of about your mindset. You talked a little bit about all that pressure, kind of like, okay, I looked at this, and that, and now I made this decision, right? And because of your inputs, you expect certain outputs, correct?
Yes.
What I kind of think is interesting, and I remember being like that. Before I became a waterfowl hunter, I was a deer hunter. That's what I liked to do. And I took it like super, super seriously. Then I went into waterfowl hunting, and something kind of, I don't know if it's age, maturity, or if it's more of a, something has re-hardwired itself because I'm a bird hunter now. But I go out and, I'm on private land, and I go out and I have my game cams, and I'm trying to pattern these deer, and I move my game cameras around. I do certain work, all this, all that. And, I'm like, yes, okay, I'm going in. I'm targeting this buck. I'm going in for him tomorrow, or these 2 or 3 bucks. But as soon as I get out there, right before I step out of the truck, and right before I'm about to take that first step towards my stand, I kind of think, well, it's all just a crapshoot for you. You're not a very good deer hunter. Like, anything that you see today is bonus. And I kind of put all, I have all that hard work, but then it's like, you know what, man, all bets are off. Like, you did all your work already. And now that you're going in there, it's luck. It's luck now. You can't change anything. You've already made your decisions. You know where you're going. All you can do is be as quiet and sneaky as possible, get in there, and then wait for whatever happens. And I think that's a little bit of a cop-out, like a mental cop-out. You know what I mean? Because I can just say, shit, that's deer hunting, which might be like a good like safety mechanism for my ego. But that's kind of how I feel about it. As soon as I'm on this glide path and there's nothing really I can do, unless I'm like, I go too fast or if I be too loud getting into my stand. And then up until I draw back, it's all luck until then. Despite all the work that I've, put in to make these decisions, I still think of it as a chance sort of thing. So I think that helps protect me and allows me to have like a little bit more enjoyable time in the woods, like waiting for the sun to come up. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
So I get what you're saying. And I think we have some, hear me out on this. We have some similarity on that. Because when I set out, and so we're just going to talk deer hunting. When I set out to deer hunt, I set out for the gender of my tag. Mm-hmm. And so in this case, something with antlers. And so I am yet to reach a point where I feel comfortable placing a age or size on my goal. So I've never set out with, okay, I want to shoot a 7-year-old, 10 point, 20 point, whatever, non-typical, whatever the case may be. I'm yet to do that to myself because I know it's only going to make it way worse. So I think that's my, as you'd call it, maybe cop-out defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And I'm just happy to hunt. But that being said, I do have the goal of, okay, I'm setting out for an antlered deer. And so when I'm not seeing the antlered deer or getting the shot opportunity, that's when it just really eats away at me. Sure. But I do, like, I value everything that you just said, because I do think that is really important. You have to, at some point, the stars align or they don't, and it is what it is. And you have to be grateful for the time and the resource. But in my case, I think it's just, I'm so goal driven.
The point that I was trying to make there, I think is that, you are like going in there and like, you got a goal, like you have that's your mission, man. Like your mission is in there. And I think it might tell out here as we come full circle on this kind of story on what's going on. But you're right. You don't have that kind of like cop out that I do where I'm like, oh, I'm a bird hunter. And I'm out here. These are like the only 2 weeks I hunt. And if I get a deer, I don't, one of those things. But anyways.
And I've met guys. I met plenty of, I shouldn't say guys. I've met hunters, people that do have those more specific goals of a certain age deer, a certain inch antler, that kind of thing.
Right.
And I understand that it's like to each their own. But for me, like, this is the third buck I've harvested. So, and anyone who's listened today or heard me any other time, like, they understand that I'm still very new and young to hunting. So I haven't set those types of goals before, but I get it. And I understand at some point that's, maybe that's just somebody saying, that's their goal. But there's a lot of benefit and value in having that open mindset of, we'll see how it goes. Because I wish I could do that. It would really make my brain happier.
All right. So I'm going to tell like my story real quick. All right. So I've been patterning this group of, there's 4 bucks that are on the property that I hunt. It's private property. It's like, it's not very far from my house at all. Super great setup. And so there's these 4 bucks I've been kind of watching for the last month. And I'd say, any one of those walks in front of me, I'd shoot it. And there I made my decision based on the wind and the trail cams. I said, hey, I'm going to go set up on this oak tree that I have. And so I go and I get in there around, I was set up by 6. I like to get in there about an hour before everything and kind of let everything settle down. And I also knew that these bucks had been moving. They'd been moving in there around 6:30. So I definitely wanted to beat them to the general location. So I get up there and not expecting much, just because I hadn't seen them when I did the card pull like 2 days before that. I hadn't seen them for maybe like 2 or 3 days. At any rate, long story short, this guy ends up making his way into one of my shooting lanes. So I draw back on him, and he steps behind this tree, and he's just there forever. And so I let down. I had already drawn, and I drew on the gist of this is I drew on this buck 3 times, and so by this time, like my adrenaline has like kind of stopped. You know, I've had enough. He's been around me for about 15 minutes. I've drawn on him 3 times. I'm calm now. I'm good to go. I'm kind of in the zone, and I say, okay, make a good shot. And, you know, albeit I'd been probably flinging about 20 or 30 arrows a week ever since April, probably. I have 20 or 30 arrows a week. And whether that's, you know, in the basement, close drills, or like actually at distance, 60, 50 yards. Anyways, this buck, he's at 20 yards. And I'm in a 12-foot stand. And, so I draw back on him. He's finally out in the open. I let it go. As he puts his, the shoulder that's closest to me, he opens it up. Whew, I let it go. And I think, yes, freaking good hit. He turns, and I can see the arrow sticking out of him about 6-8 inches. I said, that's not good. Then I heard this kind of crash go off about maybe 20 or 30 yards away from me. So I said, you know what? I'm going to sit here. So I sat there for 45 minutes. I didn't hear anything else. And okay, I need to go check on, see what's going on. I did my cursory, 50-yard walk to where I'd kind of hit him. Found my arrow. My arrow it was broke off about 7 or 8 inches from the broadhead. And then there was blood all the way up to the fletching. And I said, oh, that deer's dead, right? So I didn't want to give it any more. So I got out of there and waited 3 or 4 hours. And then I called some buddies, Alec Fair and some of those guys. And we went and started walking the woods about 5 hours after I shot this buck. And we found 1 blood spot and 2 blood spots, really. Nothing. And I've been out in those woods, every day after work till just about dark, and I haven't found anything. Neighboring properties, nothing. I haven't seen him on camera yet, but I'm thinking that I snuck it in underneath of his shoulder, and that it didn't come out. That it didn't go through a lung, and maybe it came out as brisket or something. But there's nothing, and I've searched like a good 3-mile radius for crows and vultures and coyotes. I can't. I don't know. I'm kind of hurting right now, and I got this internal struggle. Is he dead? Is he not dead? Is he hurt? Is he all right? Is he gonna, what's the deal? And it kind of leaves you with this weird let off. And there's a certain amount of shame. There's a certain amount. Did I not prepare enough? Probably not. Took my bow in today to the bow shop and got it checked out. And yeah, there was some tweaking issues that, I figured out a little bit. But all in all, I don't know what. And I've got a free day tomorrow. I want to go deer hunt. Am I meat hunting or am I bone hunting? Is he alive? Is he dead? And I don't know. What's your take?
Well, I have lived through a very similar situation last year. And after that experience, and with talking with friends and even a game warden, My mindset of your situation is that you don't have proof of a dead deer, so therefore you have not killed a deer. And that can be argued, understandably. But from my viewpoint, from I guess like a hunting ethics standpoint, would be that if you have beyond a reasonable doubt exhausted all efforts to recover something that you shot at and you don't recover it, then you have done your part as a hunter. Now, if that's how you put a timeline on that, that's a gray area. But if you feel comfortable at the end of the day, say, okay, like you said, you've looked every day this week, you've had buddies help you, you've checked cameras, you've looked on neighboring properties. I mean, at the end of the day, like, these animals are hardwired to survive. And so that's the direction I lean, is that you've from my standpoint, you've put in the time and the effort to follow through on what you did, and you haven't recovered a deer. So I would have no qualms with shooting a buck tomorrow morning if a buck walked in front of you.
Yeah. And I called the game warden, and this was I want to say something about game wardens. I think a lot of people will get kind of jerks to game wardens in when they're not in their presence. The game warden should do, dang game wardens. You know what? I have not had a negative experience yet with a game warden. And that's to include, like, even when I was like an 11-year-old and we were out like paintballing on some WMA or something. And he took all of our paintball guns and laid them out and said, I could take all these guns, blah, 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 and then walked us around and explained to us what a WMA was, which was a pretty cool, experience. And then, but anyways, so I called one of my local game wardens and I said, hey man, I kind of want you got a minute? He's like, yeah, I got a minute. And I was like, I kind of want to explain the situation to you and kind of get your take on it. Not just from the law side, because I've already asked, I've already looked at that. I know what the law is. But kind of wanted his take on it morally and ethically. And, so I explained that. I laid the situation out and he goes, well, he's like, I couldn't in good conscience ever write you a wanton waste ticket, for the amount of effort that what you've said you've put into finding this deer. He goes, it sounds like the only thing that you haven't done is taken like a blood dog out and try to find this thing. I said, yeah. And he goes, which is, that's on you. He goes, my personal, you want to know what I would do, Ben? And I said, yeah. And he goes, my own ethics say if I draw blood on a deer, he goes, that's my method. Like, I have somehow impacted that being's ability to survive. And he goes, that's it. He goes, I touched the deer with my arrow. And that's a mental tag out. And he goes, however, within the letter of the law and, a certain, he's like, I would just, if I were you, I'd go look one more time, find out who you are and what you think about it. And he goes, but if you think that there's a dead deer out there, just be done, man. You're good. If you don't think that there's a dead deer out there, go on, get your buck, man. He goes, it's a carcass tag. You don't have a carcass. And so he said, so go. He goes, maybe go look one more time, find out what you think about it. What does your heart say? And for like a game warden to tell you, what does your heart say about the situation? It's kind of an interesting perspective, right?
Yeah, it's not what I would expect.
Yeah, exactly. So it is. I think, I have some soul. I think tomorrow I'm going to shoot a doe. I think I'm just going to shoot my doe, and then I'm going to wait and see if he pops up on my camera, and or if I see him again, I will shoot him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's got a very characteristic rack on him, and so I would have no qualms. Obviously, that would be the ideal situation, is if he walked underneath me. But So yeah, if anybody's been wondering, like, where was the Monday episode? It was because I spent so much time. I was literally doing my due diligence trying to find this damn deer, and I don't know. I'm gonna blame myself for not putting in enough reps on my bow, whereas I, kind of had a little bit. I'm a pretty good shot with my bow. I sit out there and I'm drilling, inch targets at 30, 40 yards, feeling good, but it's just you still have to have the trigger time.
Yeah. Bow hunting is really unique in that aspect. I feel like I can say this because I have a very vast depth of experience with firearms. And that was the first time I killed a deer was with a rifle. First buck I killed was with a rifle. Then I worked my way backwards, and I used a crossbow, and now I'm using a bow. Mm-hmm. And that actually wasn't intentional, just kind of how it happened. But if you shoot a deer with a rifle, the velocity and the physics of that round impacting on that animal, granted, it can still live, but your margin of error is so much bigger than with a bow. And I think that's what attracts a lot of people to bow hunting is how close you have to be and how deadly accurate you have to be. So I'm not trying to say that you're not a good archer by any means, but it's an interesting thing to note and to share with people. Like, this right here is just a huge, huge, huge part of bow hunting. Like, you miss and you can't chamber another round. You can't always, knock another arrow like you may be able to do with a rifle. Or you don't have that perfect lung shot or that perfect heart shot. Or maybe you whack them in the butt and they just, for whatever reason, fall over and die. Like, it's just wild.
Right.
But so it's just a harsh reality of bow hunting that makes the successful harvest so gratifying when you think about all these things. So when the next time that you been hunt with a bow, a deer, and you connect and you end up bringing one home, like, you're never going to, like, this conversation right here, you talking about looking for this particular buck, like, that will be so prevalent in your mind. And for decades to follow, like, you're never going to forget this. And you're never going to forget it when you go in the backyard to practice shooting your bow or getting your bow tuned or the next time you hunt, every time you hunt.
And that's the thing. I've never had this happen to me. Usually I'm always just like 10 yards away. There's the deer. You know what I mean? It's like, all right. Yep. Blood trailing. What the hell's blood trailing? But let's double down on like kind of the negative experience. You remember that thing I was texting you about with my hunting property?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So guys, and I apologize if you're listening to this and you're the other guy that has permission on the property that I have. Man, I'm a little upset with you. And so right after this is happening, I'm out looking for this deer, right? So I always, there's a rancher that also, he's got paid rights out there to rant, to feed his cattle. And I keep good comms up with him. And I'm always like, hey man, when are you pulling deer off, or when you pulling cattle off? Do you need any help? Hey, by the way, there's a section of fence that's down. Do you want me to go out there and fix it? Or you want to have one of your guys fix it, etc.? Hey, I saw one of your cows that's got a limp. I'm always texting this guy and calling him about, and he's like looked at me like an asset. And we've had a lot of amicable conversations. Well, anyways, so in the course of all this, I'm out looking for this deer, right? I get a phone call. I'm at work. And no, I wasn't at work. I had just picked up my wife because she had her wisdom teeth taken out, and she's really bad on anesthetics. So it was kind of like taking care of a big baby. And I get this phone call from the rancher, and hey, what's going on? And he's like, hey, and he's like yelling at me, and I'm like, whoa. And he goes, if you guys can't keep that gate shut, I got cows, I got, a certain amount of cows. Whoa, what's going on? And it turns out the other guy had left the gate open. And like, it doesn't matter if there's cows there or not. I don't want anybody like coming onto that property while I'm there, like even if they have permission, you know? So I always lock the gate behind me. I pull in, I lock it, and then I go park up just out of sight so nobody even knows I'm there. Because I don't want people like, oh, hey, I know that truck. That guy's a bow hunter, or that guy's a duck hunter. I don't want him like seeing that I'm parked there. So I pull up into like this grove of trees. So I'm just super frustrated because the rancher is really upset that this gate was left open for like 5-6 hours when he has a couple cattle still left out there. And it's like, this guy is his first year having permission on this property. And the landowner asked me if it's okay. And I said it was okay because, you know, he's a dad with like, you know, 2 kids. And it's like, oh man, I've been working this property for like 3 years and like creating all these great connections. It's like one left open gate can like jeopardize everything. And that all happens right after I miss this, one of the bigger bucks I've ever seen. And just terrible week. I'm going back to bird hunting, man.
Well, you got to wait a couple more days and you can.
That's true. No, this is my last weekend, I think, for deer hunting or serious deer hunting. I might do a couple weeknight hunts. But yeah, what's your take on that little side story there?
Well, I know the landowner relationship thing is tough to maneuver. The only experience I've had with landowners has been my in-laws. So I have a whole nother dynamic I have to work through there. Little bit of tension at times.
Sure.
So I get what you're saying when you talk about like this is a long play, like building those relationships, and especially because you have multiple stakeholders, right? You have the landowner, you have the rancher, and whatever else may go on that property, past, present, future. And then, you know, helping a buddy out. I mean, I get that. People ask. I mean, people have asked me to hunt on my in-laws' property. I'm like, that's just not a can of worms I'm ready to open.
Yeah. Oh no, let me specify. I didn't know this. I don't know this other guy from Adam. He had sought out permission from the landowner, and the landowner said, well, you're going to have to ask Ben because he's the guy that I gave.
Oh, I thought you guys were like bros.
No.
And that's okay. All right. Gotcha. Interesting.
No, yeah. So the landowner, he approached the landowner and said, hey, you know, I'd like to go hunt here. Well, you'll have to ask, you know, Ben. And so then he asked me and he said, would you mind? And so I kind of vetted the guy. And of course, you know, my bleeding heart, he's a dad, doesn't have time to go out and all this other stuff.
Nobody ever does. Yeah,
exactly. And so you know what? Yes, let's do it. Let's team up, you know? And so it was good. I mean, it's so good. I'm not like soup, like.
You won't burn his house down, but you might leave a can of gasoline in the driveway.
We can recover. But I'm just frustrated because like I got that phone call and I was so nervous and like mad and like, it's like, I want to hunt this place for like the next 10 years and I'm not even going to live here. You know what I mean? Like I want to take my daughter out here someday. Like we're going to hunt our deer in Nebraska and then this will be the place we come to hunt deer in Kansas, you know?
Yeah, that's tough. Well, okay. So, and I already told you this, but knowing you'll be okay. You'll sweet talk your way back in. In fact, they'll probably throw in extra land while they're at it. Like, Ben, you're a great guy. Here's another 1,000 acres and a tractor. But as far as this other guy goes, see, I've never really had to think about it, but that's tough because you want to be mad, but people are people. Like, I highly doubt the guy intentionally left the gate open, right? Like, I don't really see a world where a hunter goes out and says, man, there's nothing I hate more than a bunch of cows, and leaves the gate open.
Yeah.
Probably, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and you've been tired when you've gone hunting. Like you said, he's a dad. He's probably worried about his kids. You know, for all we know, his kid got sick and he was rushing home, or I don't know. That's just probably a tough conversation that you have to sit down and talk about. But I also think from the outside looking in, that's a conversation that needs to happen with everyone involved. Like doing the ring around the rosy of like, well, call the rancher and then call the landowner and then call Ben. And then I think that's as inconvenient as it may be at times. I would want to sit in the same room as all those people and talk about it, because that's going to be the quickest, easiest way to work through any friction.
Yeah. Problem is, though, is that's, when you're a deer hunter and you are on a property that the taxes get paid from the cattle that graze there, right? Mm-hmm. You're a beggar. You're a beggar in that situation, right? What are you bringing? Now, you have to bring, what I try to do is I try to be an asset. I provide the rancher valuable feedback on his, his herd and things that might be going, I've found dead cattle for him. I've found low spots in the fence for him. He's looking for 2 cows, and I've been, giving him the game cam pictures and running out there, keeping my eye out, just so he knows that, oh, okay, yeah, this guy's not a hindrance to what I'm doing out here. In fact, it's actually beneficial having a hunter out here. Somebody that keeps an eye on the land, kind of the warden of the property, which is exactly what the landowner thinks of me as. Like I'm the warden of his property. Like he's got a problem out there, Ben will go fix it. Oh, he's got a problem out there, or like somebody needs something, or like, oh, hey, I want to have this group of dad and sons go out and fish on the pond, but I don't want to give away the code to the gate. Will you go unlock that gate for them and then lock it back up when they're done? That kind of thing.
I think that's what you have to do, or what you should expect to do.
But the problem is this first time that you're a problem, it's just easier to get rid of you than it is to have you. And so it's like, well, they can't keep the gate closed. They're done. And right. Now, fortunately, I think that I have the relationship with the landowner and I think the rancher for them to weather that. I don't know if this other guy does, even though I'm the guy that's getting yelled at for it because, the warden of the property or whatever.
Right.
And, I feel slightly responsible for this other hunter's actions.
So maybe that's the takeaway, is to make it abundantly clear, if it ever happens again, make it abundantly clear to the rancher, the landowner, any other stakeholder that it's not your property, and you should not be the one making the decision of who has access. Like, and of course, hindsight's 20/20. But I'm thinking, had I been in the situation, I would have. If the landowner's name is Steve, I would have said, "Steve, I appreciate that you trust me enough to make a judgment call. However, this is your land, man. I'm not going to say yes or no. I'm comfortable with having other people or having another hunter share the property. That being said, I want you to make that decision, especially since you didn't know the guy prior." So
yeah, well, the other thing too, kind of, come back around to this is implied and specified tasks, right?
Yeah.
I find a gate and it's closed. I'm going to go through it and I'm going to close the gate. If you're listening to that, like, always just be better than everybody else on that property. You know what I mean? Walk lighter, pack a piece of trash out that ain't yours. Make you have zero claim to the land. And you just need to be the best steward and just show that you're the best caretaker of it. So,
lessons on how to improve society by Ben.
And just all that coming off of just a bundle of nerves. Yeah. So, but I'm going out tomorrow morning. I'm after we get out, I'm going to go in. I got, I'm going to re-sight in my bow, kind of from scratch. I'm going to put about 500 arrows down range tonight. Alec is coming over. We're going to do some shared shooting. He's going out west for some muleys. I'm going to go hunt this property tomorrow morning, but we're going to get everything re-sighted back in and double down on everything. And hopefully tomorrow I can pack some meat out of the woods.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah. Well, good.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I'm glad that this is our first, Deer Week episode, kind of like Shark Week, right? Like this is like Deer Week on the Fowl Front Waterfowl podcast. So I'm glad that you could be a part of it. I'm super glad that you have your deer down. Where can people see all this footage?
So this is going to come out or parts of it are going to come out in starting early November, and it will be available on Cabela's website, Bass Pro's website, as well as their YouTube channels and their social media accounts. So if you follow Cabela's or Bass Pro in any avenue, you should be able to see my smiling face with a big, beautiful whitetail and a bunch of other really cool stuff. It's not just about me. It's
only like 10% of you smiling, right? Like the last 10%.
Right. The rest is just like pure misery
and
the anguish. And they're like, why do people want to go hunting? Oh my goodness. This guy's insane.
Are we going on? We need to go on an elk hunt next year. You and I.
Okay. I mean, that's not a hard sell. I mean, you just fill in the blank of the animal, follow it up with hunt, and I'm going to say yes.
We'll just eat ramen for like 7 days.
Hey, I got a quick ramen tutorial. I'm glad you brought that up. So in all my wisdom, right, years and years of wisdom, I took my grandfather's Stanley thermos, which I still use to this day all the time. Keeps stuff hot, keeps stuff cold. It was built in like 1950 something. It's like solid steel. It weighs 100 pounds, but it works.
Green. Yeah, it's green.
Yeah, it's green.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, on a hunting trip, I thought, you know what I like? I like ramen noodles, but I don't want to take the time to warm up the water, mix in the stuff, get the noodles juicy. So gonna apply some of my NASA level thinking. I'm gonna take this thermos that
I'm calling BS, man.
And I cook like 5 packages of ramen noodles and I pour them all into this thermos. I'm like, Ian, you freaking genius. And I'm picturing myself, I'm like fast forwarding in my mind. I'm like out in an open field and it's freezing. And I just open this thermos and I have this warm ramen noodles. Turns out if you do that, the stuff gets all congealed at the bottom, plugs the entire thermos, and then you go to take a sip and all you get is like juicy, watery. That's your PSA.
Yeah, it gets stuck and then you have to like shake it out and then a bunch of noodles fall on your.
So apparently you already knew that.
Yeah, I did it in my Yeti last year and not good.
But now I know, and I think about it every time I see ramen noodles in the store. I think, Ian,
you know what I do though? Okay, so I bring 2 Yetis with me, right? When I go waterfowl hunting, and one Yeti has coffee in it. And I'm talking not Yeti coolers.
I'm picturing like a 70-quart Yeti cooler full of coffee. Just ladle it out.
Baby. What it does. No, so I got coffee in one. And then I don't put the noodles in there, but I take 2 beef ramen, like the little salt packages.
Mm-hmm.
I put that in the other Yeti, and it's like drinking hot broth, and it's great. Warms you up, gets you like it's kind of like soup, but that's what I do. I mean, I like it. So
yeah, I'm gonna say that's weird.
Oh man, weird.
Well, yeah, if you don't have the noodles, I don't know. That's just weird.
The noodles are the unhealthy part, man.
Well, we're not here to talk about what is or is not allegedly healthy. We're here to talk about what tastes nice when you're out hunting and you're cold.
Some hot broth, man.
I don't know. That seems weird to me.
Hot
what do you do with the noodles? You just throw the noodles away? Or do you...
waste. I give them to the dog. I'm just kidding. Yeah, they go in the trash.
Well, all right. Okay.
What am I going to do?
I don't know, because you're mixing all the flavor with water.
They don't sell the freaking like little sauce packets.
I don't know, man. Maybe you just need to take a Yeti cooler and make a Yeti cooler size worth of ramen noodles.
Yeah, but like we said, they all get stuck in the All right, we should end this podcast. Ian, thank you for coming by today. This was good, and I hopefully will have another little second little recording that I'll clip onto this tomorrow morning after a successful deer hunt, and we'll call Deer Week complete on the Fowl Front podcast.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks, Ben, and everybody. Have an awesome rest of your day.
Next time, these folks will hear from you. Well, actually, pretty shortly, because I think we're going to do a little segment while we're out in the blind.
Might as well.
Yeah, we should.
When in Rome, and I'll be able to further critique your broth.
Yeah, that's right. We'll try that. We'll try it out. So, all right, buddy. Yeah, that's right. We'll try that. We'll try it out. So, all right, buddy. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Fowl Front Waterfowl podcast. Please come join us on our Facebook group, the Fowl Front Waterfowl podcast group, where you can connect with a good group of hunters, because we're all in this together. We need to act like it so that hopefully our great grandkids will be hunting ducks over our favorite public lands. We also ask that you go ahead and give us a written review on iTunes and give us 5 stars if you think we deserve it. And we really do want to hear back from you so that we can give you the best possible content. And if you get in on that Facebook group, you can get in there and you can ask questions and you can tell us what you want to hear next, or you can tell us what you don't like. And we'll be sure to tailor things to our listeners. So, all right. Stay safe out there, and we will see you next week.